Hi, this is Lou from Glowing Pigs International, and this is the 8th tutorial in a series of tutorials explaining how to code an Android app that plays music in a service. The reason you want to play music in a service is so that if someone starts the music playing and goes to surf the web or get their email or whatever, the music continues to play in the background. In the tutorials leading up to this, we talked about getting the basic application up with a play button and playing the music in the service and some pop-up dialog boxes that tell you what's happening. What we're adding in this tutorial and the next tutorial is what's called a seekbar. This seekbar displays the progress of the MP3 you're playing and also allows you to grab it and move to a different section within the audio you're playing. This tutorial is just going to deal with showing the progress, and then tutorial 9 will show you how to code so that when you grab the seekbar it moves to a different place in the audio. Let me just show you what we're going to have when we're done with tutorial 8 and tutorial 9. We're basically going to hit the play button, and as you see, all the stuff we already put in is there. And now the music is playing and the seekbar is showing us the progress. I think it's every 2 seconds it moves. And now if I grab it and move it over here, it's going to have to buffer for a minute. It has to find the position, and once it does, it will start playing the music again, starting at that position. So that's what we're doing. Now the issues we have are that, you know, the service is playing the music and somehow that service has to update the activity, which is the interface, with where it is within that music, and that's what we're going to be dealing with here. So let's get to the code. The first thing you have to change is in your main.xml file, which is your basic layout for the application. We need to change some things. First of all, if you remember, we had a multiple linear layouts. We don't really need those. So I'm going to take this portion, this whole section out and replace it. But we're going to keep the same thing we had before in terms of the text view, which is going to show the song title for the song. But let's pull that out, and I'm just going to pull in the code that we need here for the application. So we'll just plug that right in there, and basically you see we still have the text view. Let me just format this source. We still have the text view that we had before with the song title, but now we still have the button, but it's now within one linear layout. We have the button play stop, and then what we added, the new thing, is the seekbar, and we're calling it seekbar 01, and it is a fill parent, which means it'll go totally across the screen, as we saw over here. See, it goes totally across the screen, but the height is wrap content. And that's basically it. Now that we've got that, we're set in terms of our interface. What we have to do now is put in the code. Most of the code is in the service because the service has to calculate what is the length of the total MP3 file, and then where is the media player within that MP3 file, because we have to constantly broadcast the position to the activity. But the activity also has to know how long is the song, so that when it displays the progress within the seekbar, it knows, you know, this is the length of the song and I'm either a quarter of the way through or halfway through or whatever. So that's what we have to do within the activity, and we're going to do that with obviously what we used before, which was a broadcast to the activity. So first of all, in order to set everything up, we need some variables. So let's get those in there right now. Okay. And I'll explain them to you after I plug them in. We have a string called sense seek position, and an integer called which is the integer displaying the position within the actual audio. This media position is also part of that, and media max is the total length of the song. That's what the media max is going to hold. That I have to import here a handler library, and let me explain. We're going to use a handler. Handlers are used when you're doing multi-threading operations, and the way this is going to work so that the service doesn't get all tied up. The service has to do a number of things. It has to play the audio, but then it also has to be sending this message out at regular intervals to the activity so that the seekbar can continue to move. So we're going to send that message out via a separate thread so that it's a better use of resources. And to do that, you need a handler, and we'll get to that shortly. We also need a variable that tells us when the song ends, because when the song ends, we want to stop sending that information over to the activity, and the activity has to know the song is over so that it can change the pause button to a play button. Okay. The last thing we need is the action that this broadcast is going to be performing, and we define that action using our package name, and then we give the action a name called seek progress, which is going to, broadcast the progress of the action. So it's an identifier for our broadcast, and we're calling it broadcast_action. Okay, so that takes care of that. Now, when we create the service, we have to set up an intent which uses that action, broadcast action. So let's do that. Because remember, you always broadcast using an intent. So it's very simple. We're defining we're using that variable seek intent, and it's a new intent, and the action is broadcast_action. Now, one other thing we need to do, and this is really for the next tutorial is going to deal with this, we need to set an on-seek completion listener, which tells the service what to do, the media player what to do when seeking is complete. So, for example, if somebody grabbed that seek bar and moved it to another position, the media player listens for when that seeking is complete. Now, I left one thing out. When you're in your My Play service, if we didn't put it in already, I don't remember if we put it in prior tutorials or not. Plug this in. On seek complete listener is part of what the implements phrase after service has to have. Okay. So we've plugged that in, and the context is this, which is the service itself. The next thing we want to do is the actual work that figures out the position of the audio, the length of the audio, etc. And that's going to all happen in the onStart command once the service starts. And we're going to plug that in after all of this media player work is going on. So we'll plug that in right here, and we're referencing now a method called setupHandler, which contains all the code that's going to do the work. And let's take a look at what that code actually is. We'll just plug it in right here. And let's take a look, because sometimes when I paste this stuff it doesn't go in quite right. So what we're doing, handlers, and I don't want to go deep into handlers. This you can look up on the internet or on the Android development pages. But what handlers are used extensively in Java also, so it's a basic, but it's used in a special way within Android, but it's a way of handling threads. Just remember that. And this remove callbacks takes away, stops anything that the thread is going to be doing. So right away, we first want to make sure that if the thread is sending information over to the activity, we want to stop it and start afresh. Okay, so we're removing callbacks to this send updates to UI, which is a method that we have further down here that sends the updates. Then we want to start this handler. This handler then wants to start. You use a post delayed, which means you can set this on a timer, and it'll execute the send updates to UI at regular intervals of 1 second, which is 1,000 milliseconds. Okay. Then, along with the handler, you have a runnable, which is the actual thread that starts the thread that runs what you're going to run. So the runnable is send updates to UI. Okay. And this now runs on a different thread, and what it does is it executes this method called log media position, which we'll get to in a minute, and then its loops starts it all over again, and it continues to do this every 1 second. This is actually a mistake. That should be 1 second. Now this log media position is where all the work goes. It looks to see if the media player is playing, and if it is, it gets the current position of the media player, it gets the full length of the clip that's being played. Then, using the intent that's going to broadcast to the activity, we use put extra to put certain values in. We're going to put in the value of the media position, which is collected here, and we're going to put in the value of the full length of the audio in this variable, and we're going to put in the value of a Boolean, which tells whether the song ended, into this variable, and then we send the broadcast over. And we're doing this every 1 second. Okay, so every second we're sending the position, the length, etc. over to the activity, so the seekbar then can do something. So that's where we are there. That's the major part of what we have to do. But now there are a couple of things we also have to do, just for cleaning up and housekeeping, etc. On destroy, let's say somebody stops playing music, so the service gets destroyed. We have to make sure that that handler stops sending updates to the activity. So within on destroy, we're going to put another one of these remove callbacks to stop sending the updates to the activity. So that's one thing we have to do, and that may be the last thing we have to do, actually. Let me just make sure everything else. I think that is the last thing we have to do in this service. So let's save that, and let's just, as I always do, just format everything and make sure that we don't have any errors in here. And we're set there. So now let's move on. Whoops. Now let's move on to the activity and see what we have to do there. Now the activity, basically what it has to do is receive this information. The seekbar then has to figure out how long is the clip based on the variables it receives from the broadcast, and then also what is the media position, and then just move the seekbar over to that position. So let's get the variables we're going to need. Okay, obviously remember we're going to have to register and create a broadcast receiver to receive this broadcast from the activity. Remember, you learned how to do that in a prior tutorial, so you can go back to those if you need to. We need a seekbar library in here, so we import that, and we're going to have a seekbar variable that represents the seekbar, a then variables for the maximum, for the size of the file, the song ended, and then we also have a Boolean variable which tells us whether the broadcast has been registered or not. Okay. Then we have to set up the receiver and do some of the work here. So let's get to where that goes. Okay. So that's all going to happen within the onCreate. Let's plug that in. So we're instantiating a broadcast receiver called broadcast receiver. And this intent is service intent. If you remember, that's the intent associated with this MyPlay service. And we're going to update the UI with that service intent. So this is a method that we have down here. Okay. So the method takes service intent as its parameter. And what it's going to do is, from that broadcast that we sent over from the service, it's going to get the variables that we sent over. So it's going to get the media position, which is stored in counter. Then it's going to get the size of the file, which is stored in media max. And then it's going to get the song ended value. And then what it does then is it's this variable seek progress is going to be the integer version of counter, because remember we sent these variables over as strings, so we have to put this integer.parseInt to change them into integers. So this becomes the position in integer form, this becomes the size of the file in integer form, and then this is the whether the song ended or not. It's not a Boolean, actually, it's an integer. I'm sorry. And so then we set the maximum for the seekbar, the size of the file, to seekmax. So seekbar.setMax is seekmax, and seekbar.setProgress is seekProgress, which is here. Now if the song ended is 1, we want to make sure excuse me, that means that the song has ended, and we want to make sure that button is changed from a pause button to a play button. Now one thing we haven't yet done is we need to reference the seekbar that we put into our main.xml file. So we're going to reference that in the same place we initialize the views for the buttons. So we're saying that this variable seekbar equals seekbar01 within the main.xml file. There's just a little bit more to do. We have to do some cleanup here, and a couple of things we need to do. We haven't registered the broadcast receiver yet, so we're going to have to do that, but we also have to remember to unregister it whenever anybody stops the service. Okay, so let's do that first. We'll just plug that into stop MyPlay service here. We're unregistering that broadcast receiver, making sure first of all that it is registered before we unregister it. Then we need to register it in a couple of places here. We're going to register it right when somebody executes this method play audio, because we want to, if the audio is playing, we obviously want to restart receiving its position. So we're going to register it right there. So do that. So we're saying register broadcast receiver. The filter is broadcast_action. And then we're also saying broadcast is registered is true, because we want to make sure that that is included there. Next thing we need to do is register. We have to unregister and register in 2 other places. And we're going to get to this later on as a whole separate group of tutorials, which is managing the state of your phone or Android device, in that if somebody leaves the application for any period of time and then comes back, you want to make sure that you're handling that properly. So there are some methods that are provided. On pause means somebody has left the application temporarily. So what we want to do is unregister the receiver if that's the case. So we're going to plug that in. It's the same kind of code that we already used with the buffer broadcast. So we just plug this in and we say if the broadcast is registered, unregister broadcast receiver. And then we also, when they come back after they've left, which is in an on resume, we want to re-register. So we'll do that too. We'll just plug that in here. It says if the broadcast is not registered, please register it. And then we're done. And just to review, we changed the main XML to contain the seekbar. We put all the code in the service to continually update the activity, and we did that with a handler which created a separate thread and a runnable, and that thread then constantly is sending the values of the media position, the full media length, and whether the song has ended or not over to the activity. And then in the activity we have a broadcast receiver which receives all that information and updates the seekbar. So that's really the gist of it. And just to remind you of what this would look like then is, as soon as I hit this, it'll start playing and the seekbar updates. Now remember, at this point we can't grab this and move it because we haven't done that code. That code we'll cover in the next tutorial, tutorial 9. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.